The Mating School by Jonas Mears, Chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11. Lily found the room easier than she'd expected. She followed the flow of students from the dining hall and down to the third floor. She was glad that no one bumped into her in the halls. She thought about the conversation she had in the car with the other females from the pack, and wondered if the rumors of this being the mating school were true. Her class was in N311, which she soon found out referred to the 311th room in the north wing. She looked out the windows as she walked down the hall. It was a crystal blue day, and the sunlight sparkled off the lake. The ground around was covered in a white blanket of snow. Room N307 was the nearest room. Room N309. The room was not what she'd expected. It was warmer than the rest of the school and the hallway outside. The floor was covered in a soft moss. There were trees inside it also, if not for the distant beige walls of the room and wall sconce lights. Lily would have thought she was outside. About 12 students had already arrived. Some stood near a wall, and a couple sat on small boulders around the space. A few leaned against one of the nearby trees. One, Lily knew, was the lichen from last night. His aura would be hard to miss, and yet it was different from last night, subdued somehow. What would cause such a change? The teacher, Mrs. Burnett, arrived shortly after. "Gather round, please," she said, bending down to open a box at her feet. "When I call your name, please come get your class marker." Lily was expecting the class marker to be some kind of pen, but when the first student received theirs, it looked like a deep orange silk scarf. The next student, Irene Nettles, received one that was more of a washed-out orange. One by one, other students went up as they were called. Most received some shade of orange, but a few got yellows, and one got green. Lily couldn't help but wonder what the colors signified. There were only a few students left to be called when Lily noticed there were only 3 other females in the class. Lily thought again about how there must have been some kind of mistake with her classes. Would she even be called at all? "Ryan Nelson," called the teacher, and the lichen moved to the front of the forest room to receive a solid black marker. "Lily Ikenna." Lily's legs felt leaden as she moved to where the teacher stood. There was a moment as she walked up, and Ryan walked back, that their eyes met. It was as if time stood still, and all things fell away until there were only his dark eyes and sharp brow, and Lily seemed to feel 1,000 things at once. For a moment she felt drawn to him, but then they passed, and it was like nothing happened. Lily resisted the urge to look back at him. She was almost to the teacher now, who was holding out a red class marker. As she walked back, she noticed that other students had tied it around their waist like a belt. Some wore it like a scarf, though. She went to do the same, mostly because it gave her something to do. She felt on edge after her experience passing by the lichen. The rest of the class passed by smoothly. The teacher instructed them on meditation techniques, and they were given 20-minute intervals to practice each. Lily had a hard time focusing on meditation, though. She kept having a tingling feeling in the back of her neck that made her think that Ryan was looking at her. She wouldn't let herself turn to look, though. She couldn't help but put up a kind of mental shield, as if to protect her mind. And it didn't seem like she could do that in addition to meditating. The lunch bell couldn't have come soon enough. And when it did, Lily attempted to make a fast escape. Unfortunately, the girl Lily recognized as Irene from when she was called to the front got in her way. Irene plowed her shoulder into Lily. "Back off, whore," Irene in a hiss of a whisper. "I won't tell you twice." And before Lily could say anything or ask for clarification, Irene pushed past her and out the door. "Great," said Lily to herself. "One class and I already have an enemy." The class marker didn't help Lily with her goals of camouflage. She still didn't know what the colors meant, but by the reactions of others who seemed to avoid her now, a red marker seemed like little more than a curse that made her stick out like a giant pumpkin in a flock of geese. Just my luck, she thought to herself, making her way back up the stairs and towards the dining hall. She hoped that Anne would be at lunch. Maybe she could help her understand what went wrong because rhyme and reason were eluding her. Chapter 12. Lily was halfway through her salad when Anne caught up with her. "You'll never guess the most amazing rumor I heard," she said by way of hello. "Are they going to have a sledding day?" Lily guessed, a bit wildly. A chocolate fondue party was her next guess. "More amazing than that," said Anne. Her eyes were alight with excitement. She leaned closer to Lily and whispered confidentially, "It's about how you and the lichen are mates." "Ryan?" I said. I couldn't help but laugh. "Holy goodness," said Anne. "You're on first name terms too?" Well, Lily said, not knowing she wasn't supposed to refer to him by his first name. These kinds of things weren't exactly listed in the printed code of conduct. "No, we're not really." "Denial," said Anne, perhaps to herself. "It's not," said Lily. "Honestly, it's nothing. We looked at each other once, that's all it was. This school has a gossip problem if that was morphed into such a grandiose mate rumor." "I guess there is a bit of a gossip problem," said Anne. "I guess that means Barbara doesn't actually turn into a mealworm on the full moon." Lily laughed. "It's not likely." "So you're not mates?" "I don't think so," said Lily. "You sure you're not mates?" There wasn't a warm tingling all over. Lily paused. There was a connection. Could they be mates? Since she doesn't shift, maybe connections and sensations are different for her, and yet, maybe not. I don't think so," said Lily at last. "I heard he wouldn't stop looking at you all lesson," said Anne. "I think that's exaggerated. It wasn't more than a glance." "Well, yeah," said Anne. "Maybe. But even so, it seems he's never glanced at anyone else." Before more could be said, the pre-bell rang, and the remaining students started packing up and heading to class. Lily thought about asking Anne about the class markers. If anyone knew about them, she would. But she was already getting up and taking her food tray to return it to the roundabout conveyor near the exit. So she instead looked at her schedule to see where she needed to go next. Fighting defense, room S592. She'd forgotten how stressful the first days in a new place can be. "Exciting too," said a small voice in the back of her mind. "I guess so," she said absent-mindedly, heading towards the staircase that would take her down to the 3rd level. She wondered what fighting defense would be like. She wondered if she should tell the teacher that she couldn't fight to save her life. She wondered if she should mention that she wasn't able to shift. And yet, it seemed like the school had more information on her than she would like. The Adjuta Alpha might have told them about her not shifting, and yet she couldn't be sure if he knew. She couldn't be sure why, but she was reluctant to be forthcoming about it. What if they kicked her out of something? How would she help her orphaned family then? No, she'd better keep things like that to herself. Better safe than sorry. Part 2. "Are you going to breakfast, Lily?" said Sophie, Lily's roommate, the next morning. Lily winced as she finished combing her hair in the bathroom. Her muscles ached with every breath. "I think I hurt too much to go to my classes today." "Nonsense," said Sophie. "Did you read the code of conduct? Skipping class isn't allowed unless you've been admitted into the infirmary." "I'm guessing I'd have to walk to the infirmary to be admitted," said Lily, opening the bathroom door. "Yep, and I'm not sure if they accept patients just for muscle soreness." "Well, that's messed up," said Lily. "I guess I might as well go to breakfast then." "Are you hurting that much?" asked Sophie a few minutes later on their way to the dining hall. "You were in the fighting class. You must have seen what a fiasco it was." "Well," said Sophie, trying to think of a way to put it nicely, "I suppose it'll be easier if you start winning your matches." "Maybe," said Lily, "assuming they don't kick me out for my fighting inadequacies. I still don't understand why they would assign me all these hard physical classes. It just doesn't make sense." "Maybe they see something in you that you don't," said Sophie, as they turned in the dining hall corridor. "Or maybe they made a mistake," said Lily with a sad sigh. She couldn't help but think about all the years she'd worked as a servant. She thought about how when she dried the dishes, she would dream of an opportunity to be seen as an equal, and to have the opportunity to grow. And yet, now here it was. And it wasn't that she wasn't grateful. It's just that it turned out to be a lot more challenging than she could have expected.